Hello, this is One Black British Woman's Voice. Today I thought I would look at the subject of Christianity. I did a blog earlier on, or a vlog earlier on, called Religion. And I've done another vlog as well that looked at the whole Grenfell incidents and the Christian response to it. But I'm going to talk about my path and my journey and why I stopped becoming one. So, I used to be a practicing Christian. And I don't even know how much detail I should go into on this one. I used to be a practicing Christian, but I'm no longer one. I define myself as an agnostic, and an agnostic is a person that believes that all ways are valid. So if you're a Hindu, if you're a Jew, if you're whatever faith path you follow, if it's valid for you, follow it. It's good for you. However, I do not believe in one God that I should espouse myself to. I don't believe that there is a one way to God theory or road, if you like. But before, I attempted at least three times in my life to become a Christian, because what I found about the Christian God was that the Christian God is nothing if not clever, or Christianity is nothing if not clever, in that no other God can claim that they came down in human form and that they suffered slings and arrows. No other God can say, I was strung up on a tree and crucified or killed. No other God can claim that. Gods are gods. They are divinities. They don't get strung up. They don't get stabbed. They don't get wounded. They might fight amongst each other, but they won't ever be subject to violence from their humans, from their human creations. And so I felt that Christianity was nothing if not clever on that level, in that this God can actually say, yes, I have experienced these things. Yes, I have gone through pain. Yes, I have gone through rejection. Yes, I have gone through falsehoods and false accusations. And I was drawn to that. Also, I was drawn to the personification of this God, of the Christian God, in that he was love. However, I found that though there is an initial outburst or a need to conjoin with this God, to understand and follow this God, that desire peters out when you have life experiences that don't match up to what this God is supposed to be. So, for instance, God is love, as so many, particularly Anglican Christians. God is love, love is God, God is in a circle and around us and wholeness and free, and all that phraseology that they use. But I found that my life experiences were at odds with this God, the Christian God that claimed to be love and claimed to be looking out for you and claimed that no bad experience will go unpunished. And also I found it very hard to reconcile following a Christian God and watching people die. I mean, Grenfell Tower, the tower block that was subsumed in flame, killing hundreds of people. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like, being a child suffocating to death. And I cannot imagine why a God would allow that. And so there were things like that, issues such as in my own life. I touched earlier on, you won't see this video for a bit, that I touched on an issue, something that happened a few years ago. And I didn't feel as if God was in the midst of that. I felt that there was a point where God could have cut that pain off or stopped the bad thing happening, but this God didn't. And so in finding that my life was not going the way that I felt it should be, I thought, well, if it's not going the way that I think it should be, and this God is love, and the two things aren't meshing and resolving themselves, then there's a problem, and I can't adhere to this religion. Also, as I mentioned, there was something that happened a few years ago, and it turned out that one of the racists was someone that went to this church that I went to. So it was like, I don't want to be here anymore. Churches are nothing more than hives for racists, for hypocrites, for all sorts. But essentially, it wasn't so much the people, it was who this God was supposed to be. And so I found my desire to follow Christianity, my need to follow Christianity, just waning. And it's more or less come to a stop. Now, I said that I was an agnostic, so I believe all ways are valid. However, there are occasions when I wake up first thing in the morning and I'm a card-carrying atheist. I see things that happen around me and I'm a card-carrying atheist. I can't even allow for the idea that there are other gods. But it doesn't mean that I've completely extricated myself, in that, yeah, if I go through a hard time, I want to pray and I want to talk. I want to talk to a God. I want to talk to a Jesus. I want to do all those things. So I'm not saying that there aren't times when I'm thinking, oh, I really could do with a God, and then I don't say something which might be construed as a prayer on occasion, but I do, at the core of my substance, I find it very hard to believe that there is a God, or that God, or that the Christian God is the one that I need to follow. I also find it difficult to comprehend, or I'm increasingly finding it difficult to comprehend that a God would be male. There are two genders on this planet. If God was just a man, if he was male, then he would simply make self-replicating males. He wouldn't make women. What would be the point to us? So there are so many religious ideologies that I am just at odds with. But with Christianity, essentially, I tried to follow it and I couldn't, because of those points that I've touched on over the last 5 minutes. I'm not saying I'm not saying that I wish there wasn't a God. I wish there was. I wish there was one that I had a personal relationship with. I wish there was one that I could understand. I wish there was one that I could follow. I'm just saying that I cannot follow Christianity. Also, actually, sorry, I said earlier on that it wasn't so much the people that drove me from Christianity. It was the fact that the perception, the representation of who God was did not match up with what I expected to have from life. Actually, there were large numbers of people who I could pinpoint to and say, that person is absolutely disgusting. I remember I had, I'm just thinking about this now. When I was a Christian, I was feeling particularly weighed down by an issue, and I approached a couple of people who were gifted in the spirit of prophecy and prayer. And I normally wouldn't approach them, but I thought, let me approach them and let me just, ask for them to pray for me. And how it goes is that you ask, you don't get given too much. You don't give the people praying for you too much detail. Sorry, I need to actually give you a lot more backstory than this. Okay, so there's an initiative at a church in West London, and I think it's called Prayer and Prophecy, or Prayer, Wealth, Healing, or something. You go up to these people, you give them a little snapshot of what's going on in your life, and they pray for you. So I went to these two people. I was thinking, let me just try this. This is whilst I was still a Christian. And I said to them, I gave them a little kind of a veneer of what was happening to me. I didn't go in too in depth. It was something quite loose, something that you couldn't really knit together and say, that's the backstory. Just enough information, or just a drop of information for them to kind of get them started. And they prayed, and then the woman was white. This is the thing, that the woman was white. She said to me, and this is a middle-class white woman, she said, I see the word leader. I see the word leader. And it was ludicrous, because I'm not a leader in any way, shape or form. I'm very much a facilitator. If you have a dream, I am happy to facilitate that dream, but I am not leadership material, never would be, never. But when she said leader, there was two things that rang in my head. One, I knew what God was talking about at that time. God wasn't telling me I was going to be a leader. He was actually admonishing me because I actually had a crush on a church leader. And I thought to myself, there's no way I can go through with this crush because he's a church leader and I'm just this woman who's really angry. And do you know what I mean? I was particularly still really angry about this thing that happened to me on the train in 2012. And I just remember dismissing it. And at a moment when this white middle-class woman said to me, I see the word leader, I see the word leader, the first thing that popped in my head was, God is telling me if I wanted to make you the Princess of Japan, I could. Not that he was going to make me a leader, but that he had heard me. Sorry, I'm talking about this and I'm thinking to myself, that was such a nice thing. Makes me wish I was a religious Christian again. But anyway, and that I heard you in your quiet place admonishing yourself, telling yourself that you can't be attracted to this church leader because you're not a leader. And I'm telling you, I could make you the Queen of Mars if I wanted to. The second thing that struck me was that the woman calling me a leader was a middle-class white person. Now, this is quite a revelation in itself. Knowing as I do about, the way that white people tend to think, white people tend to think, at the heart of them, there is a resistance to black leadership. They prefer leadership in their own image, which is how they portray Jesus, don't they? In their own image, blue eyes and blonde hair and all the rest of it. So that this middle-class white woman should say, I hear God telling me, you black woman. She didn't say you black woman. But, sorry. But that this white woman, this middle-class white woman, very middle-class Kensington white woman was saying to me, I hear the word leader was significant in itself, because I knew that was going against her own core prejudices. And please, trolls, don't bore me with what she was and what she was not. I know how racism works. I know how white English mindset works. Please do not bore me with what she was and what she wasn't. I know at the core there is a resistance to acknowledging black people in any leadership role. So when she said it, I was like, God, this must be God, because my goodness, I mean, it's hitting two things on the head. You know, it's telling me, I heard you in your quiet place calling yourself a non-leader, and I'm actually putting these words in the mouth of a person who would not knowingly or readily call any black person a leader. And that was really significant to me. Now, sorry, this is a really long, windy way. It's the scenic route towards my point. My original point, just to remind you, was I said that there were actually people who also put me off following Christianity. So this is amazing. So there was a girl I'd got to know relatively well at the church I was attending, and I went back to her and we met up and we had coffee and everything else, and I did not tell her about what these people what these two white people who prayed for me had said. So we were talking, and then I just thought, you know, probably I was hocked up on hot chocolate and coffee cake and feeling a bit, you know, like, let me share some more stuff with this girl who's going to be my new, you know, who I was friends with, but we were still kind of finding our way in terms of the friendship maze. And I said to her, you know, I've got a crush on this leader and this woman. And there were red flags, but because I was a Christian and I was of the notion that everyone at the heart of them had a goodness in them, and I kind of ignored them with her, but there were red flags with her. But she clarified those red flags for me when she turned to me and she said to me, no, I don't think that would work. And I was like, and in a roundabout way, she basically said that I would not be worthy of a leader. So because she was saying it in a roundabout way, I said to her, to clarify, I said to her, are you saying that I couldn't be a leader's partner or a leader's wife because no one would want to follow me? And she said, yeah, that's what I mean. Right. So first of all, who even thinks like that? Who would even voice that out loud? So I looked at her and I said to her, well, that's interesting, because there were these people from that church from West London who told me I was a leader, and they were like middle-class white people. So you know how spectacular that revelation is. And her face fell. Didn't fall. Her face contorted into warped anger and hate. And it's been years since that incident happened, and I still cannot fathom what it is in her that felt so threatened that she needed to tell me I was not leadership material. But I still cannot fathom what it was in her that was so threatened that to tell her this made her angry. Because as I said, I'm not a leader, I'm a facilitator. I have no leadership goals, no leadership ambitions. I have no leadership directions. I've never expressed a leadership career or a goal to anyone in my life. I like to write. I like to read books and I like to write. That's what I do. So I cannot fathom what it is that made this girl so angry when I revealed this to her. All I know is that it did make her angry. And these are the kind of things that I was up against in terms of people at church. Like I said, it is 80% the fact that this Christian loving God does not match up with my life. It doesn't mesh. But 20% of it was encountering some of the most disgusting creatures I've ever had the misfortune of coming across. And she was one of them. And also, what churches tend to say a lot is churches are hospitals, which is a really shoddy, awkward, bizarre, pathetic analogy. Because no one goes to a hospital and denies chemotherapy. You accept chemotherapy. Whereas it seems to me that churches are stuffed wall to wall with people who gaddily bound into church with the utter determination not to be healed in any way. For most people, churches are just social clubs and ways of meeting men and women and doing all sorts. Nothing more, nothing less. So that analogy that churches are hospitals is a defective one. Because all I've actually encountered are people that go to church just to be even more wicked in church than they are out of church. That said, I'm sure there are one or two very lovely people with sprigs of integrity lingering somewhere in their souls. However, I'm of the mind that those people are rare, far and few in between. But that's just a bit of backstory about why I'm not a Christian. All of it probably sounds very garbled and confusing. Apologies if it is. But I am one black British woman's voice, and I am out.